Hello everybody, RaspberryBeryl here, and today we're going to be reading one of my biographies of one of my queens of Mewni, Plutoa the Strong. I want to apologize that it took me so long to get this out. A few weeks ago I was almost done. I was so sure I would get it out, and then got a whole bunch of work and stuff dropped on me. Nothing went as I planned. I was not able to finish the biography and get it out in time. And now I'm at a beach and it's not the best conditions, but I didn't want to wait any longer, and so I decided let's make the video. Plutoa's biography is a bit long, so we'll be splitting it up into two different videos. Please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and for any weird noises in the background, especially because I'm at a beach. Not the best recording, but... And let's begin. I hope you all will enjoy. Plutoa the Strong was abandoned when she was young. One day would return and fight without even a wand. Now sits upon our gleaming throne. Strength, Plutoa the Strong has greatly shown. Plutoa Butterfly, the Strong. Born 1087 a.m., died 1143 a.m. Was queen 1103 a.m. through 1128 a.m. Married to Beryl and Shadow. Children, Destiny Butterfly. Plutoa Butterfly would be conceived on Grievan's 30th, 1086, on the night her mother, Princess Solus, and her father, Edmund, became engaged. It was also that day that her grandmother, Queen Stella, would go into her puberty madness form, starting most of the future issues. It was on Darturk 25th that Queen Solus realized she was with child. Solus was arranged to marry Prince Shruvan, as it said in her mother's will, and she didn't know what to do once she had the baby. Solus decided to make her wedding as soon as possible and convince everyone that the baby was Shruvan's. After Edmund heard that Solus and Eric were to be wed, he ran away, never to be seen or heard of again. Princess Plutoa would then be born on Splenix 9th, 1087, on a night of red bright moon. She was born with a bit of dark blue hair, dark blue eyes, and red fermata on her cheeks. Due to Queen Solus lying about her pregnancy, Plutoa was considered to be born 3 months early, but appeared to be a full-term baby. This, and the fact that the child didn't resemble either Solus or Eric, made King Eric have doubts and suspicions of Solus. A few weeks after her birth, Plutoa's red fermata turned dark blue like her hair. Solus had no idea what this meant, and hoped it wouldn't raise more suspicion. She also feared it could somehow have to do with Edmund, and what if Plutoa had some of her father's demonic traits? Time passed, and fortunately for Solus, Plutoa didn't change more or express any demonic traits. The kingdom would then be in a state of peace and tranquility. The family had lots of great times together. Eric put his worries to rest and enjoyed his daughter, and this made Solus calm down and feel that everything would be okay. Sadly, the time of happiness could not last forever. In the beginning of 1089, a new disease would be spreading across Mewni. Many were infected and lots lost, including Plutoa's grandfather, former King Kevin. The virus would last several months and then simply disappeared. Plutoa's little sister Athena, the true firstborn of King Eric and the first second-born butterfly in several decades, would be born on Org 7th, 1090. She was born with pink 5-petaled flowers with leaves on her cheeks, and had hair and eyes resembling her father. The fact that this child resembled him and his family almost completely, and that Plutoa didn't, puzzled Eric. King Eric would speak to his family about his thoughts, and that he wanted to trust his wife, but there were so many things on his mind. His mother, Lady Shruvan, also felt unright upon hearing what her son had to say. She would sneak in and get some of Plutoa's DNA to be tested and see if she was truly Eric's daughter. It would only take a couple months for Lady Shruvan to have the results, confirming Plutoa wasn't of her blood. After getting this information, Lady Shruvan would gather her family to discuss it, then later shared it with the royal council. 5 months after the council met, Solus and Plutoa were led and put into the dungeon. Asking what was going on, Lady Shruvan and some of the council walked in, telling her that they knew about Plutoa and how she was and her sons. They revealed to Solus that they knew since the council meeting. but couldn't get rid of her then because Athena needed her. Lady Shruvan proclaimed that she and her son now had full control over the kingdom. Solus could not be trusted. Solus was told she had committed treason and would be punished, as well as Plutoa. Plutoa stared, watching her mother scream, telling them that they were overreacting, and that she didn't think she really had a choice. She yelled, asking to speak to her grandmother Tara and the MHC. The MHC were escorted to her cell to speak with her. Plutoa watched, not understanding what was happening, but could tell that things were bad. The people of Mewni were then told how Solus was no longer queen, and that Lady Shruvan and King Eric now had full power. The people were confused, and told that Solus was evil and would learn more later. Solus was to be executed in 3 days, and Plutoa was to be banished. Solus and Plutoa sat in their cell, Solus crying, hugging her daughter, asking why things had to go this way. Plutoa looked at her mother, trying to speak and ask what was wrong. Hecapoo would walk into the cell to have a word with Solus. Hecapoo explained that Solus didn't deserve to die, and then handed Solus a cloak, telling her to run. They'd be looking for her for a while, but if the council thought she wasn't in Mewni, things would be fine. It wouldn't be safe for Plutoa to come with Solus, due to the fact that the kingdom would be searching for her. Solus decided on a place for Plutoa to stay, and Hecapoo would tell the council she had finished the banishing. Solus thanked the MHC for all their help, and made sure they knew the plan and would be taking care of the kingdom and Athena however they could. Solus quickly did a few things quietly in the castle, and then she and Plutoa said goodbye and ran into the woods. Solus decided to leave Plutoa with her old friend Quinn, due to her being the closest person she knew to Edmund, and their home was far enough from the castle. Solus quickly explained what was happening to Quinn, asking her to please take care of her daughter. Quinn agreed to care for Plutoa and wished Solus the best, hoping she would be able to care for herself and survive. Solus then asked her to please not tell Plutoa who she really was until maybe she was around 12, and to give her a note she had written. Solus looked into her daughter's sleepy eyes, kissed her on the head, and said goodbye, leaving into the woods. It was 1091, Plutoa was only 3. Quinn held Plutoa's hand and looked down at the girl, wondering if she understood what had just happened, and hoping she could keep the princess safe. She got out a mattress and tucked Plutoa in next to her own 2 sons, Grayson, who was 5, and Beryl, who was 3. Quinn spoke to the people of their small village about the princess in the morning. They all understood who Plutoa was, and that she wasn't to know, and that they needed to keep her safe. Plutoa would awaken in the morning, confused of where she was, not remembering much of the previous night. She walked up to Quinn asking where her mama was. Quinn looked down at her and smiled, then picked her up and told her mom was on a very important mission. She then told her that she could call her Mama Quinn, and she'd be taking care of her. She then walked over and introduced Plutoa to her sons, telling her that these were her new brothers. Not much is known about Plutoa's early life after this. All records come from the people of the town, Quinn and Plutoa's diaries, and Plutoa herself. Plutoa seemed to have forgotten her royal life by the age of 5. Plutoa was closest to her brother Beryl, most likely due to them being the same age for the most part. Plutoa seemed to have a great childhood, friends with everyone, helping out and doing work wherever she could. Plutoa writes about her brother Grayson teaching her and the other town's kids how to dance, and Beryl trying to learn guitar, and about her finding a frog and how she tried to keep and train him. Plutoa didn't really question her being different from the rest of the family for a long time. She saw plenty of weird families when they went on small trips to the other towns to gather food. Plutoa had a small memory of her mother telling her she loved her. She wondered who this was and when it happened. She would slightly question herself and wonder why her family made her hide her cheeks when they went on those trips. She thought maybe they were a demon symbol. Were they bad? Quinn writes of Plutoa having weird dreams sometimes, of a red light speaking to her, telling her things she couldn't always understand, but she felt it was telling her to hold on. She wrote about Plutoa starting to go through some weird things around 8. Her eyes would glow red when she's angry. Other times she'd start playing a bit too rough, slightly destroying some things, or just whispering to herself. Quinn was afraid of this, but tried to stay strong. Plutoa rarely had these outbursts. Quinn tried to think of what this could be, but she didn't know. Edmund herself had never done anything like this as far as she could remember. Quinn considered giving Plutoa the note and telling her the truth on her 12th birthday, but she didn't think Plutoa was ready, and so decided to wait. In 1102, on her last night of being 13, Plutoa had a dream of a red light. It told her it was time to begin. Plutoa woke on her birthday, slightly scared, but decided to ignore it. She had a great 14th birthday, having lots of fun, but then Quinn decided to tell her the truth that night. Quinn brought Plutoa into the house and sat her down, telling her she had something very important to tell her. She explained everything to Plutoa and gave her the note, and told her how she loved their life together, and she hoped that Plutoa was happy. Plutoa was shocked from everything she had heard. A princess? She suddenly felt she could slightly remember the past. Suddenly, many things made sense. She stared at the note, afraid to open it and what else it might unveil. Plutoa was able to bring herself to open it, and it wasn't as jaw-dropping as she feared. It would take Plutoa a few days to come to terms with everything, but she still felt she didn't know enough. Plutoa would then ask her brothers to please accompany her closer to the main town and castle of Mewni. She had to know more in what happened to the kingdom. Her brothers and some of the townspeople agreed to go with her, and so they set off. Plutoa covered her marks and wore a hood. She complained that it was easier to hide her identity when she didn't know it. Plutoa and her group posed as new villagers who had just arrived and didn't understand exactly what had happened, and asked some people what they knew. They surprisingly got a few different answers. Some people were convinced that Solus and Plutoa had been killed. Many believed that they were evil and the kingdom was better off. Some wished that they knew what happened and that they could bring them back. Plutoa was happy to hear that there were some people that believed her and her mother were innocent and that they should return. Plutoa was even more surprised when a woman explained that she knew many people were mad and afraid of the disappearance of their queen, and there were several times that the people slightly rose up and tried to get answers, but they were quickly stopped and covered up. The woman mentioned that she was sure that King Shruvan's death 2 years before was due to someone assassinating him for his wife's punishment, and not due to the stroke like the people had been told. Plutoa was a bit disappointed when leaving. She got to see how the kingdom was now, that it was mostly okay. There had been a few problems, but she didn't learn much new, and she was hoping to actually get a look at her younger sister she just learned she had. They'd returned to their village, and Plutoa asked Mother Quinn to please explain more to her. Quinn further explained her father Edmund and her mother Solus's relationship, and what she knew of the will. Plutoa was furious at her stepfather and step-great-grandmother, and assumed her half-sister must be just as evil as them. That night, Plutoa couldn't sleep. She could just think of the things she suddenly had dropped on her. She thought she saw a bit of a red light on the floor, and so sat up and looked out the window, and saw the moon with a red highlight. For some reason, Plutoa says when she stared at it, she felt she knew what she had to do, like something was telling her she had to fix the kingdom, but she couldn't hear them. Plutoa would later wonder if it actually happened, or if it was just a dream. Plutoa would the next day start planning her plan to take back the throne. She began training, trying to increase her strength. She asked the people of her village if any of them would be willing to fight beside her. They had all known her for a long time, and they knew the truth much longer than she. Were any of them wanting to get their old queen back? If they were lucky, they wouldn't need to fight. They could just talk and explain what really happened. But they needed to be ready to fight if they needed to. Most of her village agreed, and they began preparing. Plutoa and some of the villagers went to the other towns, looking for anyone else willing to fight. They didn't tell them who Plutoa was, just that she felt the kingdom was running on lies for too long, and that they needed their queen back. Plutoa was able to get many supporters. It made her feel amazing, and they were able to do it while keeping quiet enough that it seemed no one that would be against them knew. Beryl would ask Plutoa when she was planning on doing this attack. She was only 14, and did she really have a full plan? Plutoa told her brother she had some times in mind, but she needed everything to be ready first. She said she was waiting and listening for when it felt right. It was almost a year since Plutoa started her training in army. She thought she had a fine amount, but felt she could use more, and maybe some better weapons. She decided to take a risk and go back to the main town. While roaming around, Plutoa saw several banners of her sister, Athena the Glorious, who would be given the wand and truly given the throne shortly. Plutoa stared at the picture of her sister, wondering what she was like. With a title like Glorious, she must be a snob and be trying to cover up her faults. When Plutoa asked others, though, they all seemed to agree that Athena was their kind little princess. Plutoa grabbed the weapons she needed and decided to leave. She was sure now that the attack was the right decision. She had to save the throne from these selfish people. Plutoa's 15th birthday came, the 1-year anniversary of her learning the truth. Plutoa made sure to have fun and enjoy the day, but she was still clouded with thoughts of her past. Mother Quinn would come in and comfort Plutoa, and Plutoa apologized for being so distracted. She was just thinking a lot about what her life could have been if things hadn't gone so badly. She wondered about her father and her mother. How would she be different if she was raised in the castle? She turned to Quinn, telling her that she loved her life with them, and she hoped she didn't sound rude or selfish, but she couldn't help but wonder. Quinn hugged her and told her she understood, and was so thankful for their life together. Plutoa would then go back out and continue enjoying the party. That night, Plutoa had a hard time sleeping again. She got up sometime past midnight to get some water. She then decided to go outside and get some fresh air. She'd opened the door and breathed it in, then suddenly felt she saw some glow come from behind the house. She went around to try and get a better look at what it was. She stared at a full moon, but with a crescent red glow. Plutoa looked at it with shock of getting to see such a thing. Plutoa then closed her eyes due to its brightness, then seeing a red orb in her mind. The orb then seemed to speak to her, saying, "The time is almost here. Make sure you're prepared." Plutoa then opened her eyes to find herself on the ground and that it was morning. She then worriedly stared up at the sky, asking what had just happened. Was the whole thing a dream? What did it mean? It had seemed as if everything had happened in just a few seconds. Plutoa spoke to her brothers about the dream, and the other dreams and weird things she had in the past. Her brothers said they didn't really know. Maybe it had to do with her father. She was part demon. Could it have come from him? Or could he somehow be speaking to her? Their other theory was that some being was trying to speak to her. Some sort of force wanting to help and guide her? Plutoa thanked her brothers for their help and advice, and told them not to worry, she was fine. Plutoa went to her room and opened her diary. She decided to write out all the things she had told her brothers, and all the suggestions they had given. She also tried to draw all the things she had thought she'd seen. Plutoa stared at her notes and drawings, and then decided it might be easier to think about if it had a name. She tried, but couldn't think of anything cool, and so decided to just call it the Red. Thinking of the Red's words, Plutoa worked extra hard to make sure everyone and herself would be ready. She told them she couldn't tell them the exact date yet, but it wouldn't be much longer. Even though the battle plan and training took up most of Plutoa's time, she still made sure she and everyone who volunteered were happy, healthy, and were having plenty of free and fun time. Plutoa would have another dream encounter with the Red on Darturk 14th. It told her it was almost time, and then it began to disappear. Plutoa quickly took control of her dream and ran towards it, yelling at it to stop. She needed more than that. She got close enough to it and told it that it was confusing her. She was trying to listen to it, but had no idea what was going on. She told it to tell her more, and why it was speaking to her. The Red then whispered that she was strong, and then told her to attack on Darturk 28th. Plutoa asked why then, and the Red told her she would see. It then went on to tell her that it was to make sure things were as they should, and everything that's happened and will happen is as it should. She was destined and bound to that throne, and it was there to help and guide her to the path that was to be. Plutoa then awoke, slightly disappointed, but happy she got a few answers and a definite date for her attack. She would then the next day try to figure out what was so special about that date, but she couldn't find anything. Plutoa would tell herself it didn't matter, she waited long enough. She then announced to her warriors the plans and dates, and made the final preparations for the attack. The night before the attack was to come, Plutoa tried to speak to the Red again. All she saw was a red-shaded moon. Plutoa hoped that they would do well in the battle, and that things would go smoothly. Her brothers came to wish her good night. They all hugged each other, and Beryl told her he believed in her and that everything would be fine. Darturk 28th, 1103 came. Plutoa and her followers started walking towards the castle. Plutoa looked up at the moon as it set, feeling she could feel its power and that it was telling her it was time. It took some time to arrive at their destination, but everyone still had their strength when they arrived. They were outside the gate of the higher class part of the village that surrounded the castle. Plutoa yelled up to the guards, saying they wished to speak to the crown. The guard yelled down that the crown didn't accept visitors at this time. Plutoa tried to explain that they had some very important things to discuss, and that they came in peace and didn't want to cause a problem. Plutoa would argue up to the guard for a bit until he walked away and ignored her. The group would wait outside the gate for some time, hoping they'd be allowed in soon. A few hours passed. Finally, Plutoa had had enough and yelled to her friends that they were going to get in, and so as a group they broke down the door. When it collapsed, Plutoa was shocked to see a crowd of knights waiting in front of them. Standing in front of the crowd was a smirking commander, who stared at her and laughed. The commander spoke, telling her she was really a horrible leader, and that they knew of her arrival for quite some time, that someone had come and informed them. He added that it was so funny how they wasted her time, having her wait outside the gate. Plutoa closed her eyes and looked down to the ground, angry at herself and contemplating her choices. She then raised her head, smiling, but also with tears. She felt as if her hope for things going smoothly melted away. She had no more hope for these selfish people, and she knew she needed to help and save the rest. Plutoa looked to her followers, thanked them, drew her blade, and said, "May the battle begin." Plutoa stared at the commander, eyes now glowing red, launched herself toward him, stabbing him in the leg and knocking him out. The two armies began to fight, and what would later be known as the Battle of Princesses began. Crowds of knights came at them, and Plutoa and her followers did their best to take out those in their way, as mercifully as they could, and get closer to the castle. It would take many hours, but they eventually got to the castle and were fighting their way in. On their journey, there were some lost and others hurt, including Plutoa herself. Plutoa tried to help those she saw in need and prevent them from being badly wounded. Plutoa looked out to the sky, seeing the sun beginning to set. She realized how long it had been, and she needed to succeed in her mission. Plutoa believed in her friends, and she knew they would be fine. She and Beryl raced through the fighting, making their way into the castle to then search for her family. When they made their way in, they were greeted by Lady Shruven, who told them to surrender now before they got themselves hurt. If they did, she'd lessen their punishment. Beryl looked to Plutoa and told her to run ahead. He'd deal with her. Plutoa did so, and as she went around the corner, from the tiniest corner of her eye, she saw Beryl strike Lady Shruven. Plutoa thought she had no sympathy for these people that stripped her from her family, but something in her felt very bad about what she had just seen. Plutoa was running through the castle, quickly looking in each room for her target. She passed through the hallway and then came upon the throne room. There she saw her sister, frantically holding her stance and aiming her wand at her. Plutoa stared at her for a moment, comparing the girl before her to what she had been envisioning. "So, you're Queen Athena the Glorious," Plutoa said, "and I wonder if you know who I am." "You're the person who is bent on destroying my kingdom," Athena uttered. "No, I'm here to save it from you." Plutoa thrust herself toward her sister, who shielded herself with a spell, throwing Plutoa backward. Plutoa got back up quickly, swinging her sword at Athena, who summoned her own sword to defend herself. Athena then blasted Plutoa again, and the two would go back and forth attacking one another, while also wrecking the throne room. Both girls appeared to be losing their breath and strength. The moment finally came, though, once Plutoa was able to knock the wand out of Athena's hands and away from her. Plutoa then grabbed Athena by the neck of her dress and held her against the wall, and drew her sword. Plutoa looked down into the eyes of Athena. She could tell she was frightened to her core. Why are you doing this?" Athena whispered. "Haven't you and your evil family done enough to my family and kingdom?" "We didn't do anything," Plutoa yelled. "My father and grandmother told me about you and your evil mother, and the horrible evil things you did," Athena responded. "I was a baby," Plutoa yelled with tears. "You and your family are the evil ones, if any. You were going to kill us. My mom might have made some mistakes, but she didn't deserve some horrible fate. You people are horrible and probably would have killed me if my mom hadn't escaped and saved me." "What? Wait, she wasn't killed? She might be alive," Athena remarked. Plutoa continued. "I didn't do anything evil, and even if I did do anything slightly wrong, I was young, I could be taught, and I didn't deserve some horrible punishment." Plutoa then paused, and her expression changed to one more distressed, still holding Athena, but lowering her and dropping her sword. Plutoa looked to her sister and spoke. You were also just a child, and it's clear you weren't raised on the truth. And neither was I, really. You don't deserve a punishment for what your guardians did. You had no say in it, and it appears you do care about the kingdom. May we please speak to one another?" The sisters then spoke as Plutoa suggested, getting the other's point of view and discussing the truth. Plutoa looked at Athena with worry, wondering if she would believe her, and to her amazement, Athena said she was sorry for their complicated past, and that she did believe her. Athena then knelt down, bowing, saying, "I surrender. The kingdom is yours." Plutoa was shocked, but asked her not to bow. She then picked her sister up, thanking her, but added that they would be doing things together from now on. The sisters exited the castle onto the balcony together. Athena raised her voice for everyone to stop, and the sisters held their hands together and raised them high. "The fight is over," they both proclaimed. After making sure everyone had stopped fighting, Plutoa and Athena thanked their warriors for fighting for them, but also apologized for all the pain and things that had happened. And things would be better now. They worked hard helping everyone up and getting help to those who needed it. Athena was very devastated when she saw her grandmother and tried to hide her feelings from Plutoa. Athena then showed Plutoa's followers a place they could stay, so they didn't need to journey all the way back to their homes. Athena then showed Plutoa where she'd be staying. Before going to bed, the sisters walked around the castle and talked more. They walked into the throne room once more and looked at the destruction they had caused. Plutoa walked up to the throne and brushed some of the rubble off of it. Athena looked at her smiling and asked if she wanted to sit, and so Plutoa did. She sat on the throne overjoyed that she had accomplished her mission, and now the new journey for fixing things had begun. The story continues in part 2. And that was part 1 of Plutoa the Strong's biography. I hope you all have enjoyed and are ready for part 2. If you want to see some of my art of Plutoa, please go check out my DeviantArt. And eventually I plan to make a video featuring it and some other art of my princesses here on YouTube. But if you don't want to wait till then, please go check out my DeviantArt. See you all soon for part 2. Goodbye.